Good evening, and welcome to tonight's topic, which is Chapter 3, Ethics. Tonight what we want to do is take a look at some of the basic ethical concepts that govern how companies operate. And then what I want you to do is apply these to a video case that I've put into the course notes. So as you go through the PowerPoint slides, what you're going to notice is we talk about ethics within a much broader framework. And that's how are companies governed by what they do. Well, if you think about it, ethics is kind of at the top of that pyramid. Those are the real moral principles or values that govern context in a marketing environment. Those are somewhat country specific. Now, because we're here in the United States, we tend to be governed by a moral code or an ethical group that's based upon the Judeo-Christian background. Our laws and everything else flow out of our experience based upon that framework, that ethical framework. If you go to another country, if you go to, let's say, Japan, you'll find that their ethics are slightly different because they've come out of a different construct. Now, at the end, every ethical group in the world believes key things, such as murder is bad, that you shouldn't cheat people, that there should be justice if somebody does something bad to you, okay? How that's applied really depends upon the ethical construct of that particular group. Coming below ethics, we have laws. Laws basically take those ethical ideas and they codify them. They put them into codes. Now, in the United States, most of our laws, most of the judicial system is based upon the English system, which comes out of a precedent of what's happened in the past, and we build on it. So if you ever hear a story on the news about them citing different cases in how a lawyer got to a position, or you've seen it in the movies, that's a great example of how laws in our system work. Now that works in every state except Louisiana. Louisiana is a little different because of its French heritage. It uses the Napoleonic-based system, a very different system of codes. So it works slightly differently than everywhere else in the United States. If you go to Canada, you'll find the the justice system in Quebec works on a very similar basis. Below that, we have very formal and informal groups that set up codes of conduct. In business, what you find is every company belongs to one or more industry associations, and those industry associations will lay out what's considered to be proper behavior for members of that group. So if you're in, let's say, an alcohol industry association, it'll talk about not advertising to minors, encouraging people to use the product in moderation, those types of things. Those are codes of conduct that come out. You'll often hear about that in sports, by the way, where they'll talk about somebody has a morals clause in their agreement, or when it comes to endorsements, they usually talk about a morals clause. That basically says that we've got certain things we expect people not to do, and if they do them, then it's grounds for terminating the agreement with them. We also have some sort of self-regulation. Self-regulation occurs where you've got a non-government agency that sets standards and runs them. Typically, you see that in the professions: law, medicine, accounting, engineering. All of those tend to have rules and regulations set up not by government, but by the industry group. So you'll have the Society of Automotive Engineers will set things up, or you will have the CPAs will set up their own rules. In the medical side, it tends to be like a College of Physicians and Surgeons, or the American Medical Association will set those kind of rules up. Below those, but equally important, is the media. The media is there to inform the public about what's going on and to let the public know how things work in the background. So not only do they tell you the results, but they're also telling you the system that's used to get to those results. That's very important for the public to understand the steps that were taken to set up a new rule or a new regulation or a new law. And last but not least, you as the citizen. You have to be active in society. For civil society to work, you have to take an active role in what's going on. And it's your job, if you don't like something, to let people know you don't like it. We talk about emailing your congressperson if you don't like what's going on. We talk about civil protesting. Well, civil protesting is when people don't like a rule or regulation and they want to let people know that they don't like it and why they don't like it. So you do see that. Now, your textbook spends a lot of time talking about all sorts of different ethical constructs. It talks about deontology, where everything is sticking to obligations and duties, utilitarianism, the needs of the many, causis, moral relativism, and virtue. All of those are important, and what you want to do is find out which one really defines you as an individual. You're going to find that you represent all of them in your day-to-day ethical behavior, but one tends to take more of a precedence. That's going to be your primary ethical driver. And that comes from you within. It's not something that somebody can tell you, oh, you have to do it this way. Ethics are one of those things that at the end of the day are very personal and are driven by your experiences, your morals, and your background. So take a look at those different concepts, whether it's deontology, utilitarianism, causism, moral relativism, virtue, those types of things. If you're a Star Trek fan, you'll notice a lot of those represent the different societies that the Starship Enterprise visited. It wasn't until I started teaching ethics that I really realized that. And I go, oh, yeah. If you take a look, utilitarianism, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Well, that's a very Vulcan idea. Deontology, you have to stick to obligations and duties, very Klingon thing to do. So we tend to be more causus. We compare current problems to past issues, and we see how we solved it in the past, and we relate to that. That's just an aside. If you're not a Star Trek fan, don't worry. It's not part of the course. In business kind of breaks down into one of three types of ethical behavior. At the very, very basic level, we have what's called a pre-conventional behavior. And what we do is we act until we're told not to, and then we'll change. It's all about punishments and rewards. As long as we're getting paid to do something, we'll keep doing it. But the minute we get fined for it, we'll change our behavior. If you think about that, that's very early stage. Some companies still practice that, but that's highly reminiscent of the way companies ran at the turn of the 20th century. So if you ever see historical pieces about Henry Ford or Carnegie or any of the big barons back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they were really pre-conventional. It was pretty much a free-for-all. Now we've moved into, for the most part, conventional ethics. And conventional ethics say that we're moving based upon the expectations of society. So society expects us to produce a safe product. Therefore, it's conventional. If you want a current example of that, take a look at what the issue that Boeing faced with the 737 MAX. Essentially, they ran on a conventional basis. They were producing what they considered to be a very safe product, but they failed to mention a couple of things in the way the MCAS worked and how to properly correct for it. They hit the expectation of society. If everything went well, that plane had not a problem. But if you ran into one of the issues that caused the MCAS to have a discrepancy, then you had an issue. We're moving more and more now into what's called post-conventional. The Europeans, Canada, Japan, those countries are really leading the way in this area. The US is getting there. It's just a little bit behind those other areas, those other regions. In the post-conventional, we're worried about things over the long term. So we're not worried about making a product today, selling it today. We're worried about building a product and the entire lifespan of that product, from the time we create it till the time it's disassembled. And you're seeing a lot of laws coming into the European Union about how products have to be made to be easily disassembled, recycled, and reused. And also to use more plant-based products so that it's more environmentally friendly. That's kind of a post-conventional. We're getting there. It's just that we're not there yet, and we're slowly moving towards it. Some companies are doing that. Great examples of post-conventional behavior are companies that have gotten off the electrical grid by producing their own power. People that have gone to zero waste. There's some companies that produce essentially zero waste because of the way they produce their product. All of those things fall into the post-conventional. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is, let's put your ethics to the test. What I've given to you is the shed at Dulwich. This was an experiment run by a blogger who wanted to create the #1 restaurant in London, England, but he never wanted it to be a real restaurant. He'd worked with TripAdvisor and he knew some of the tricks to, I call it, game the system, use the system to his advantage so that the ratings were better than they would normally be. And what our hero, if you want to call him that, in this particular video does is he creates this entire fictitious restaurant called The Shed. And over the course of about 8 months, it becomes the #1 restaurant in London, a town that has over 12,000 restaurants. Now, the question I've got for you is, what are the ethics involved in this? What ethical decision do you think he took? What do you think were the guideposts he used to deliver this? And last but not least, do you think he should have been punished for what he did? Or should we take this as a lesson learned and use it to move forward? If you think we should use it as a lesson learned, then you'll really enjoy the second video I did, or I put up for you, which is Oops, I Did It Again, where our same protagonist crashes Paris Fashion Week with a pair of fake jeans and manages to get into everything. So what I want you to do is, once you've watched the video, write me a 2-page paper talking about the ethical implications of what you saw, and let me know what would be the outcome that you'd want. And then you can post it into the content section. Okay? If you do that. The rest of the chapter talks about corporate social responsibility. And what you want to take a look at is the difference in theories. At the very basic level, you've got the Friedman theory. Milton Friedman, a very famous economist from the University of Chicago, said that the market determines what's good and bad. Government has no role. He was not into regulation. He was not into anything like that at all. It was the old invisible hand that we talk about in econ. At the opposite end, we have people who are saying, look, companies create problems. Companies should clean them up. It's their responsibility because they are individuals in our society according to the law and have to act as such. So they talk a lot about their social responsibility and how corporations can move forward. And we've seen that come in. We've seen that come in a variety of ways. The rise of the B Corp, for example, the sustainability movement, the concept of green marketing. All of those things has helped move this concept forward. The downside is that we're starting to get, as consumers, fatigued by all of this. We're getting tired of all of this. And especially when when corporations try and tie themselves to a particular cause, then consumers become very tired. So thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to write me that 2-page paper talking about ethics when it comes to the shed at Dulwich, and I will see you next week.